Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to see everyone again, and hopefully, if everyone has been engaged completely, as I know you have been, there'll be very little new information here, but there'll be some surprises here. And yes, I want to talk about cardiovascular mortality. The gentleman who was running things did a great job yesterday of turning that monitor so I could see it. Maybe we could do that again. Not that I don't know what's on the slides, but sometimes there are some details. There you go. All right. So, those of you who have heard me speak, you know that I'm a fan of history. As I'm starting this talk about cardiovascular mortality, I want to start talking about some history. Last year was very special because the century turned into an adult. It had turned 18 years of age. Had a president of the United States who every day seemed to be in some kind of political trouble. You had Russia still in conflict with the Ukraine over the Crimea. And I know it's not a popular thing in New York, but the Boston Red Sox did a really good job of dominating the American League and pounding their opponent in the World Series. And those of you who've regularly heard me speak before probably know I'm not talking about 2018. I'm talking about 1918. So, yeah, and it was the Cubs, they trounced. In 1918, there was a global epidemic, okay? It was the Spanish flu. It killed millions of people around the world, killed over 650,000 Americans in 1 year. That epidemic lasted 3 years, okay? But by 1919, cardiovascular disease was back as the leading cause of death, despite this horrific epidemic. And it's been the number one cause of death in the United States ever since. There was nothing that an epidemic like this could do, and we've had loads of issues come up. Non-communicable diseases have now taken over around the world. But the communicable diseases, they would come and they would go. Cardiovascular disease still number one. So the question I have for you as an audience is, what are we going to do about it? I know you're here because you're interested in changing your own health and the health of the people around you, your families, your neighborhoods. The time has come. If not now, when? If not us, who? We have to make a difference. Okay, so armed with that motivational speech, I'm going to start talking about what it is that we could and should be doing about cardiovascular mortality. This is kind of an outline. I'll deviate a little bit from it about making sure that everybody knows the facts about the heart disease burden, then go into the things that I think are at the top of the list of ruining cardiovascular health in this country and around the world. Yes, that was there's about 1 out of 3 deaths, but they say it's on the increase again. And since I gave that introduction in more than 40 seconds, more than one American died. And probably if you look at that last bullet point down there, it's not about the cost or things like that, but how about the specific population that I come from, the African American population? About 50% of all African Americans have some form of heart disease, and a lot of it has to do with nutrition. Globally, we have exported. How many of you have been to another country? How many of you saw an American franchise in that country? Yes, and so we have exported the fast food industry to other places, and the conveniences of not having to work in the fields as the economic status improves globally has led to this kind of global epidemic of hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease. If you look at what we've done in cardiology, we always brag about, and I think appropriately so, how many lives we have saved. And if you look, you can see that over a 4-decade period, we had about a 70% decrease in cardiovascular mortality, really dramatic. And there are luminaries in the field, and I was really fortunate to be a resident at Emory when Andreas Grunzig came and did the first angioplasty in the United States, and that balloon angioplasty sort of led to doing stents, and stents have gotten so much better that we do them all the time. Well, the issue is that we have gotten to the point that all of those advancements in cardiology, first of all, have not been extended to every aspect of our society. And so we do have, this is the African American experience, and you kind of stare at that. It's coming from the Center for Disease Control. You stare at that curve, that dotted line that says that we don't have the same decrease level in the African American community. And most people are looking at the sort of vertically, the difference in the number of deaths. I'm looking at it horizontally. How long does it take the African American community to catch up? It's about 11 years, okay? 11 years behind in terms of the drop in mortality. If you look at heart disease in men, there was a very steady decline starting from the beginning. If you look at it in women, it took us a while to recognize heart disease in women and to start to deal with the fact that women can present with different symptoms. They have to be taken seriously. And it shouldn't take episodes of Grey's Anatomy and Miranda Bailey having a heart attack for people to recognize that this has been a problem for a while and we need to improve it. Still, we're mopping up the floor instead of turning off the faucet. When are we going to stop the people from falling in the river instead of trying to drag them out? And part of what we're dealing with is our obesity epidemic. It is an increasing problem, and if I could point to one thing that's going to make it change, it's this slide. 7 things that everyone should do. It would decrease the obesity, it would decrease the cardiovascular mortality issues that if we summarized everything, it would be it. We need to be active, we need to be exercising. How much? Well, we're working on that, and you'll see some guidelines come out, and they will say that based on the literature that people should be doing at least 150 minutes of exercise every week, if that's for sort of maintenance and prevention. If you're talking about treatment, you're probably closer to 300 minutes a week, and people should be really dedicated to their exercise program. Is that the most important thing? Between our lifestyle issues, there are a variety of them, nutrition versus exercise is probably about 80-20. That is 4 times more important. That is, you cannot exercise your way out of a bad diet. And you see the exercise gurus who look perfectly fit, who then have a heart attack, are good examples of that. But keeping a healthy weight is important, and exercise really does help that as well as calorie control. Having your cholesterol well controlled, less than 100 for an LDL cholesterol. If you are the general primary prevention population, if you have disease, you really want it less than 70 or even lower, as low as you can get it. No one should be smoking under any circumstances. Everyone should be doing a heart-healthy diet. Notice that I colored that in green. And the blood pressure. We had a great discussion about this yesterday, how we have new definition that an elevated blood pressure is 120 or above. Everybody should be shooting to be in the teens. Not that we use drugs below 130, we don't, but we should be doing everything we can to get the blood pressure down to that really healthy level. And everybody should be screened for high blood sugar, checking a hemoglobin A1C, even checking a fasting blood sugar. Everyone should have this information. If we're armed with the information, then we can fight the battle. Oh yeah, that 3%. That's how many of our kids in the United States in adolescent years actually hit all 7 of those. That's atrocious. That's something that we're all going to pay for in the future if we don't fix it. And there's my cardiovascular mortality curve showing that from the CDC that the decrease has stopped, and there's been an increase in the absolute number of heart disease deaths in the United States over the last few years. And so my career goal of being number 2 may not actually work. Our obesity epidemic is at the center of that, according to the CDC, that the 78 million obese adults, they're becoming diabetic, hypertensive, having cardiac events. And it's really what we do. It's our culture. Healthy dining is difficult because all the meals are so large. Calories really do matter. And so not eating enough fruit, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, that's according to the Harvard School of Public Health. These are the things that lead to the obesity epidemic and stop us from having healthy lives. So I always showed this slide talking about over a 60-year period how fast food has increased, not just in usage, but in size and calories. But then this got published a couple months ago saying that there are segments of the population who eat fast food on a daily basis. And in fact, my African American population is one of the highest in the United States, with 1/3 of people eating fast food every day. So we do have issues, particularly in women, with obesity and being overweight. Non-Hispanic African American women, 56 or 57% being obese. These are issues that are difficult to bring up, but this is something that we all have to deal with. And it's not about shaming, it's about changing the culture. So, do you have any Phoenix Cardinals fans? This was something that came out during the exhibition season. They put on this 7-pound, $75 burger. I can tell you, it costs more than $75, okay? Because it's going to cost the people's health. And so if you finish that burger with all of those things in it in less than an hour, they would put your picture up on the scoreboard and give you a jersey, okay? They didn't, and the bottom line of that slide is the surprising part to me, that they road tested it on their culinary staff. They got sick, and it went on ahead with it anyway. So that tells us where we are. We have so much more palatable and affordable foods. We have a society that has less physical demands. There's a lot more screen time. Everyone here is guilty. Tell me who here does not have a smartphone or an iPad or a computer. Is there anyone? Oh my gosh. There are 2, 3. Amazing. Okay. All right. Well, I applaud you. Of course, I wouldn't hire you because this is the way we live. It's unfortunate, but we've got to get to the point where we understand that screen time is important. And I think the newest software actually tells you every now and then what your screen time is like. And I think that's a very helpful kind of thing. So don't be afraid. You can join the digital revolution. Oh my gosh, that's even better. Self-employed. All right. Do we get enough sleep? Probably not. But probably the biggest contribution has to be this concept of that Juliana Hever and others have put out in a very nice way, showing you, the fat you eat is the fat you wear because it's so calorie dense. And so, what does 400 calories look like? Totally different depending on what it is that you're actually eating.